Hi, in this lesson we're going to look at some pearls. Not such high contrast as the silver jewellery we looked at before. In this we're going to try and keep the technique a lot looser, more gentle blending, a bit like when we did skin tones earlier on. You'd be surprised actually how many colours are in each one, even though they look like white or cream. That's your brain telling you they're white or cream pearls, which they are obviously, but in the photograph you'll notice there's a lot of different colours from the reflected colour from the skin. I'm going to start with a warm grey. What you'll notice on each of these as well, because they're spherical, they've got shading down to one side there, but then a reflected light coming back underneath them too, these top ones. And then when you get down here into the shadow area, you've just got the highlights, the points of light as it hits the top of them. You could use the embossing tool with these dots, especially on the smaller ones, just so that you don't accidentally go over where the highlights are. You want those to be the white of the paper. On this first one I've got quite a lot of pink in the top, that's a reflection of the pink flower above it. It can get a bit, in the same way it did on the silver jewellery, it can get a bit mind-bogglingly difficult to realise where you are at any given moment when you're really staring into these and they all look a bit the same. What I'm doing at the minute is I'm just noticing different shapes that I can home in on, and for me, I'm seeing like a smiley face there as a pattern that I'm working to, and that's what I'm thinking of when I'm preserving my lights. So I've got two little eyes there, and then a kind of a smiley mouth coming around the bottom with a darker area above it, and that's what I'm seeing, that's what I'm drawing. I'm not thinking of it as pearls anymore. It just helps me to see those shapes and negative shapes more accurately, because I'm thinking of it as something else. Just going to switch to a much bluer grey now. Start to bring some colour into them. Like I said before, there's so many colours going on when you actually look closely at each of these pearls. So I've got some pink still coming in as a reflection from that flower on this, even this low down on the chain of pearls, string of pearls. Just a creamy yellow on the underside of them all, which is a lot to do with the skin reflecting in the surface as well. Back to my bluey grey. So I'm just lightly shading in layers and building up the same way we did with skin tones, and the same way zoning in on these highlights, exactly the same way, just to make it look 3D. Just going and really darkening down these shadows actually. It's just going to really help that stand out. They are almost black in these darkest areas. But once again, I'm not using a black pencil, I'm building up the layers of colour using purples and my indigo blue and brown to make a deep tone but not pure black. That just helps it blend in with the rest of the skin tones. I'm actually going to take this dark blue and use it for some of the darker areas on the actual pearl, very gently. So don't want it to be blue in colour particularly. Don't want to change the colour too much, but I'm just going to use the same colour I've used here, just to harmonise the whole effect. See, on this one I've not got a smiley face, I've got more like the shape of a duck. That's what's helping me now. Get that bit right. Back to my cool grey. Just bringing in some more red tones on this dark shadows because they've gone a bit too blue. And the further down we get, the colour appears to change because they're in a shadow. So I hope you can see that defining the actual shape and three-dimensional quality of each individual pearl is as much about what's happening outside of it as it is what's going on the actual shape itself. Here it gets the two areas sort of blend. The colour that's on the underside of that pearl is exactly the same colour and tone that we've got there, just carried on into the pearl. So it makes it so it's not a round, perfect circle anymore. You're sort of taking off a chunk. There is a tiny highlight that's all remaining of the edge of the pearl, so it's a bit of a tricky one to preserve that. Just gonna put a tiny bit more of that pink in. darker, this blue, sorry, a bit darker. And just taking that dark edge ever so slightly in to define the overlap of the small pearls against the large ones like this. That is a line that's actually not there, but it's just helping, it just needs something to help define the overlap. Sometimes if I'm working on a small area like an accessory like jewellery say, it's such a tiny bit of the overall portrait and not often one that you want to focus on hugely. I wouldn't be afraid of using little illustration techniques like slight outlining of things just to make them something pop. I'm just gonna, in the same way as I was doing a tiny little extension line there to illustrate how the pearls are joined, I'm going to just take a tiny, ever so fine line just underneath the base of these pearls. It's not a technique I would use anywhere else on the face, for example, really. You want to try and steer away from hard lines, but just in this instance it needs more definition underneath it. I'm just making some finishing touches to the skin behind it. Obviously the more worked up these areas were, the darker they get, the more this is going to stand out, and you can correct the value of colour and tone between the two. Tiny bit more yellow tone under there. Don't quite know what is reflecting that colour there, but it's in that top pearl. I hope that's helped show you how to draw pearls.